Hello, viewers. We are having another interesting conversation today about racism in America. We now go over to our friends to do the introduction and we put the discussions from there. Yeah, Greg, let me start from you.
Hi, my name is Greg Jones. I'm a third-year PhD student and soon-to-be instructor at Duquesne University. And my research interests are theology of play, interreligious dialogue, and divergent conversations between two different viewpoints.
All right, Tobias.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Tobias Ninson. I hold a master's in theology from Boston College, and I am a Catholic high school theology teacher. I am currently pursuing a degree in educational leadership at St. John's University. I am a husband and a soon-to-be dad.
Yeah. Eileen.
Hi, my name is Eileen Newara. I am a fourth-year doctoral student at Duquesne. My theological interests are theological anthropology and Trinitarian theology, and the biblical and historical foundations of those, as well as their practical applications. I am also a wife and a mother of two wonderful kids.
All right, Father Daniel.
Hi, everyone, friends. I'm a priest ordained 2012 of the Second Takrady Diocese, and currently doing my PhD in Duquesne University, pursuing theology. My research interest is interreligious dialogue and about the priesthood and the church.
All right. Thank you very much.
I'm a Ghanaian.
Okay. Thank you very much for the brief introductions. Now, Greg, let me start from you. Put into perspective for us the problem of racism in America. Help us to appreciate the problem of racism in America. Is it systemic? Is it imaginary? Or is it a real problem?
All right, and thank you for the question. Again, valuable question, valuable conversation. And as you point out, there's at least three ways that people tend to view this problem. People tend to think that it is a systemic problem that's been around since the origin of the country. Of course, you probably are familiar with the 1619 Project, which makes that very claim. It's an attempt to re-envision the history of the United States. There are those who take more of a central position and say that America's ideal was founded on ideals, yet has always had to wrestle with maybe the angels of its darker, or it's not something dark, it's probably a horrible word at this point, of its more evil nature, to say that they want to oppress and dominate human life. And then there's people who tend to say, well, racism was a problem. We solved it. We had the civil rights. We had our first Black president. And so we're a post-racial society, or we should be. And so you have people who tend to dismiss the problem. I would say, based on my experiences have tended to push me more toward a central position, empathetic to the idea that this is a systemic problem. But I've had experiences where I've, all the things that you hear about, I have been followed in stores because I'm a Black man living in America. I've been tailed by the police driving through a place to go to work late at night because I'm a Black man driving. But at the same time, I've had friendships with people of all different races and nationalities and ethnicities who defy this idea that it is a systemic problem. The root cause and how deep racism goes is a complex question that requires, I think, nuance, as well as a historical understanding and appreciation of the Black community as a whole.
All right, thank you very much. You have made allusion to three very important issues. systemic racism, presence of racist principles, and then the denial of the reality of racism. Now, Tobias, from where you are coming from, you were a Ghanaian living in America. What is your own experience of racism?
All right, thank you for the question. I will piggyback on Greg's response, and as he outlined the three strands of approach to understanding racism in the US. I am more inclined to go with the first one, the 1619 Project.
Okay.
And this is coming from an experiential point of view, because my experience with the American system has convinced me to think that racism is as American as football, baseball, or apple pie. Why do I say this? Whenever any racial altercations occur, you hear a lot of, news bites and all this information saying that, well, only if this person complied, only if this person did this, they wouldn't have found themselves in this position. And this brings in a concept that, oh, assuming you're a behaved person, not the case. I have been in a suit and tie, walking into my place of work, and have been questioned by security. Excuse me, sir, where are you going? When my ID card was visibly, around my neck. So what other, conclusion will you give to such an experience? And obviously, we cannot paint everything or everyone with the same brush. And racism is very complex, and it's mainly, two forms, overt and covert. The interpersonal racism can sometimes be easily identified, and it's really, really, really difficult to handle. And it is difficult because most of the structures, most of the systems have no faces attached to them. So they are faceless. And those who have been employed, to promote the mission, the agenda of these institutions, do so for the most part with a very good and clear intention, but inadvertently, the way things have been laid down and tend to favor one group over the other. And usually people of, Black people, dark-skinned people tend to be at the receiving end of this structural biases and prejudice.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tobias. Now, Eileen, hearing this from Greg and Tobias, you are an Asian American. How different is the treatment that you receive from the Black Americans?
Yeah, I can definitely say that there are differences between the way in which your average African American is treated versus those who are Asian or Asian American community. I think that as both Tobias and Gregory have said, there are these examples of historical and current situations where you see these acts occurring, and sometimes for people it's hard to relate to because there's sort of a mix, right? When I was a kid, I grew up in a very diverse area outside of Washington, D.C., and I grew up with people of a variety of different nationalities and cultural backgrounds. And so my experience of that diversity was very positive. It wasn't until I got a little bit older that I recognized that my friends' experience of that might not have been the same, and that they were still dealing with things that I was not in some cases, and it is very complex the situation in the United States, because both the experiences of Tobias and Gregory are valid. I mean, you have other people who haven't seen those horrific experiences, because even within our country, which is so large and so diverse, there's a wide variety of understanding, and a wide variety of different types of diversity and different levels of, I mean, I used to work in a school that used to be segregated, and there were colleagues of mine who remember walking through the doors of the school only on the other side of the building, right? They were only allowed to walk in those particular doors. And they would tell us who were new and learning, and they would tell us these stories, and tell our students these stories they could understand and remember. And so much, when you grow up after civil rights and you see, you believe that, like Greg said, there's a lot of people who believe that we already took care of this. Realize when you see things like what happened to George Floyd, that no, we haven't taken care of it. When you hear your friends have been followed in the grocery store or driving down the street, it's really hard to hear and to deal with that.
Okay. So Daniel, your own personal experience of racism in America, how will you describe it?
It's a little bit shocked, because I know the church, the theology is really against racism. So I never expected to find it in the church right there, but I encountered it. When I came, in my first year, I had a friend priest who invited me to his parish. And so I joined him for Mass, and during the distribution of communion, I took the left side, he took the right side, where we started distributing. And fortunately or unfortunately, I realized that those who were in my queue, some of them started moving to join the white man's queue when they saw that I was the one standing there. So that really came to mind. Oh, is it because of my color, which really bring the real presence of Christ in the communion? Or it is, I was a little bit shocked, but that was just the experience. But this priest kept inviting me, and I had the opportunity to say masses. And when they encountered the real person and what I could say and what I could do, the perception started changing. So the idea was I was judged by my color at first, not by my work, not what I could do. And that was shameful. Another experience was that a woman saw me with my car, RAV4, even 2005, imagine. But this old white lady, American, asked a friend, who owns that car? Then the person said, oh, it's that young black priest, Father Daniel. Really? How could he afford that car? So she was just shocked that a black guy can own that car, So the idea is that, there is a perception out there. And sometimes I don't blame most of them, because they grow. It is more systemic. So you grow and you imbibe that culture without even knowing. So sometimes they do things or say things which betray them, But on the other side, I've had friends who have been good. They relate with you so nicely. And you could accept that, yes, you are also a human being, because they value your dignity. They don't relate with you because of your color. So in as much as you have had bad encounter, I've also had good encounter from Duquesne University, my classmates, Eileen, Greg, and all the other guys. And even my parish, St. Maurice, they're really good, So, but sometimes, even when I came earlier on in church, I was the only black guy. All of them are white. So psychologically, you even feel that you are different. But my point was, yes, I'm different by accident, not by substance. So I could accept who I am, and that's why I could build relationship with them and move on. And we have a very good relationship, aside the little experience, bad experiences I've had.
All right, Father, I am happy you said you are different by accident and not by substance. Now, we are also having this discussion in the light of the killing of George Floyd. I'm coming to you, Greg. Now, when you put the killing of George Floyd into perspective, how does the Black American community view how the police treats them?
Again, great discussion and excellent question. And again, this is just probably, you could say it's the culmination. You could say this is just what happens in a long line of historically documented aggressions and miscalculations and misunderstandings and misappropriations of just police power and police activity toward our Black community. The fact of the matter is that you don't have to, you could just take just a quick cursory glance at history just to know that the reason why the Black community, African Americans, people from African descent are suspicious and do not trust the police. It's because there's not only the perception that the police do not have our best interests in mind, but there's a historical reality. To be fair and to be sure, you can validly say that not all police are brutal. I'm sure all of us have our experiences, our positive experiences with police. But if you ask many of us, we also have those times when we were encountered by the police and we were scared out of our minds because of what we've heard, of what we have seen on the news, what we've read in history books and textbooks, what our friends and family members have gone through. And so there's at least, I think, a call to understand and finally acknowledge that there is a legitimate reason for the Black community to be suspicious of the police, who on one level are sworn to uphold and protect the community they serve, but in a very real way have not come through on the promise of their ideal. When we come to George Floyd, it's just on one sense, it's unfortunate. I think that's the least you could say about it. In a deeper level, it's tragic. As Father Daniel pointed out, we had dignity and value and worth and meaning before he was killed at the hands of a policeman who sworn to uphold the law in his community. That doesn't mean that George Floyd is perfect. That doesn't mean that he should be raised to be some type of ideal person, because he's a human being. And part of being a human being means that you have your good and your bad parts. But the reason why Black people are responding, I think, the way we are, this is, whether you call it an isolated incident, this is a denial of humanity, a humanity that we all share. And it's a pattern of denial. Some critics will say, well, you look at the stats and, does this really call for the response? But statistics don't really get at the heart of what's going on, because this is a denial of humanity that should concern anybody who shares the human nature. And so the question is, does your response lead you, do you give in to the despair, right? Does the Black community give in to its despair and hopelessness? And do we go down this destructive road because we feel like we're all out of options, because we feel like we've tried to reform the police, we've called for peaceful protests and it doesn't seem to work? Or do we say that didn't work, and so we resort to a destructive nihilism, or even a radicalism that is well justified, but may dissolve the relationships we have with all the other communities around us, and perhaps even our own relationships we have with one another. So to get back to the root question, the Black community has historic and probably just experiential reasons to distrust the police. And I know in my own life, it can go both ways. I know people who have had very negative experiences with police. I've mentioned earlier that I was on my way to work. I used to work early morning shift at one of my places of employment. I had to go in around 2 a.m. And in the complex, as I'm driving by, I noticed that this policeman is just following me. I'm going the speed limit, but that is a time of extreme just terror, because there's no, it's a dimly lit road. There's nobody around, and just the thought in my mind, just go to speed limit. Just be prepared. Be prepared to deal if something goes wrong, if those lights come on. And that is a terror that I don't think a lot of people realize and quite understand. You can hear it, but it's one of those things you have to experience. I think it also comes down to understanding there's a temptation that's before the Black community. It is very tempting to just resort to this destructive nihilism that there is no hope. And so we have to resort to extreme measures.
All right. Now, Tobias, let me come to you. Greg mentioned the fact that the Black community has a historical and experiential reason to distrust the police. Now, my question is this. The outpouring of solidarity that followed the killing of George Floyd, do you think it will lead to structural change in the American society? And is the American society ready for this structural change?
Thank you so much, Father. When I saw George Floyd on the bare floor with the knee of an officer of the law on his neck, my problem and my worry was not even what he has done, but as a person, as a Black person, I felt as if I was the one. And to me, it was not a question of if, but a question of when. So when is this going to happen to me? Now, the uprising comes from a well-informed, and experiential reason why there is this thing going on. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Dylan Roof committed a heinous crime by shooting, a group of African Americans in a church. He was peacefully arrested, and even on his way to police custody, they stopped at Burger King to buy a Whopper for him. Brooke Turner, another white man, a young kid who raped a person, was also defended beautifully and treated well. Now we look at George Floyd on the allegation that he purchased something with a fake $20 bill. Is this, the price he has to pay? So when you see this different systems approaching crime differently, obviously there will be anger, there will be uprising. And to some extent, I want to say that this level of solidarity is the first of its kind I have personally seen since I've been in the United States. And it's a true sign that individually, and I want to really emphasize the individual aspect, individually, there are so many people, there are so many good people out there who are willing to change. But structurally, America is not ready for this structural change because the structural change will demand a lot of discomfort from people who have for so long been comfortable. And when you are used to comfort and privilege, equality will all of a sudden feel like oppression. And that is not what America structurally and as an institution is ready for.
Okay. Now, Greg, a quick one. Let me take your view on this. Is the American society ready for a structural change?
Again, just great questions. Do I think it's ready for a structural change? We are ready, or at least we're not ready for the structural change that seems to be the demands are what a lot of the protesters and what our riders are demanding. I don't think that they're ready for it in the time frame. I think I would say that they want that is being requested. Now you say, well, maybe we could do a gradual implementation, but I think a lot of people in the Black community don't want to do anything gradually. I think they want to have things done as soon as possible. And yeah, I think Tobias is right that I don't think they are quite ready as on a structural level. Maybe on an individual, the society, like a relational level. And maybe that's something to keep in mind. Maybe that's where you start with the relationships. But again, it doesn't seem like that's the case. Maybe other people have other thoughts on that.
Okay, all right. Eileen, let me come to you. The America that you have grown into, is it ready for a structural change?
Yeah, I think in one way that people, I think there's certainly critical mass for people wanting there to be change, but I think, structural change is only going to occur to the extent that people are willing and able to examine their own attitudes and behaviors and then make those changes, because we as people carry those attitudes and behaviors into those structures and then perpetuate or work against some of those things that have been ingrained. And it's I do think that the personal relationships and the recognition of the inherent dignity of every human person is key and critical. I think when we start there and recognize that we have a psychological tendency to sort of make distinctions, and the danger is that by making distinctions, which is perfectly normal, when we start layering them with value, then we start losing our own humanity. 1 Corinthians 12 talks about the fact that we're all different in the body of Christ, and you can't say to one part of the body, you don't belong or you don't matter. And I think any approach that we take to change is going to require looking at it from multiple lenses. We have, and we've got structural issues, we've got interpersonal issues, we've got so many different pieces to this. And I do think that people want change, take a lot. And I think Tobias and Greg are absolutely correct. It's gonna require a lot of work.
Greg, under 30 seconds, do you see hope on the horizon?
I do, I believe there's hope because, as Eileen points out, that's part of the Christian faith. That's part of what we do as theologians. That's our task, to articulate despair, but articulate hope. And also, we have to overcome, as Daniel points out, these ways that we tend to divide ourselves instead of reconcile ourselves.
All right. Tobias, under 30 seconds, do you see hope on the horizon?
Well, I have sounded pessimistic throughout my sharing, but when it comes to this question, I am hopeful.
Okay.
And the hope that I have stems from the fact that there are so many individuals who are willing to change on the individual and personal level. And I think that is all it takes to change.
All right.
And when people stop rationalizing why this is happening and what should have happened instead, and are courageous as people of faith and people of goodwill to call evil what it is, then we are on the path for true and genuine change.
All right, guys, thank you very much for this lovely conversation. I've enjoyed every bit of it. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Tobias. Thank you, Father Daniel. Thank you, Greg. God bless you for having this conversation with us. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much and have a good one.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. All right. All right. All right.